So instead of trying to teach the disciples leadership as the world understands leadership, Jesus taught them servanthood, the leadership style of leading by being a servant to all. Now, in the 20th century, we saw some stellar examples of powerful leadership through servanthood. Martin Luther King, Mohandas Karmachand Gandhi, and Mother Teresa, to name a few. Martin Luther King and Gandhi achieved miracles of social justice through nonviolent mass demonstration. Mother Teresa, on the other hand, dedicated herself to the poorest children of Calcutta, India, truly serving in the image of Jesus for the poor and the marginalized. An example of true servant ministry, which in Greek is called diakonia. Now, we all know that Mother Teresa was very small and frail, yet she traveled the world seeking support for her ministry and to evangelize for the poor and marginalized. In fact, she received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979 for her accomplishments. And the Roman Church began the process of beatification after her death in 1997, which may eventually lead to her canonization as a saint. And if you stop and think today of all the powerful, despotic leaders in the world, Castro, Chavez, Ahmadinejad, Putin, Kim Il-sung of North Korea, probably not one of them would have likely refused a request from Mother Teresa, where they would have understood that there is a line that even they could not or should not cross. Yet, in spite of the great things that these folks accomplished, we can't forget that these three servants, King, Gandhi, and Mother Teresa, also suffered greatly as a result of their servanthood. Well, very recently, the Right Reverend Mark Lawrence, Bishop of South Carolina, wrote a letter to his diocese on a subject which he called followership. You see, the Diocese of South Carolina, like many, is embroiled in a crisis of what to do given the unfortunate but rather predictable set of decisions that came out of General Convention this last summer. And the bishop's letter talks about what is essentially a symbiotic relationship between leadership on one hand and followership on the other hand. And it's a relationship that I think most of us probably instinctively understand. And that is, leaders are really powerless without enthusiastic, committed followers. And followers are going to be unfocused and disorganized without a leader. And this symbiotic relationship even goes deeper than this. Because while the leader can shape the strategic long-term success of an organization, the day-to-day tactical success of any organization, including a church, is totally and completely dependent on the followers' service. And this is also important. Although the leader-follower relationship is symbiotic, they depend on each other, it does not exist in parity. And the leadership that forgets this does so at its peril and the potential peril of the organization. The apprehension of this duality of the relationship between leader and follower, that is symbiosis and parity, is nowhere better illustrated than the earthly ministry of Jesus Christ. Jesus did not spend time with the rich and the powerful. He spent time in mission with those he sought to gather around him. And the teaching which Jesus was seeking to impart to them over and over, which we heard in today's gospel, is that in the kingdom, covenanted by Jesus' blood, those who wish to be among the greatest must be servants of all. In fact, the teaching which we heard in the gospel today, in which Jesus was giving to his disciples, was a beautiful recapitulation of the same message written much earlier by the prophet Isaiah, in which we heard in the first reading this morning. And if you have perhaps come here from the Roman Catholic Church, or maybe even the Anglo-Catholic spectrum of the Episcopal Church, you might recognize that opening verse of today's reading from Isaiah as the beginning of the seventh station of the liturgy for the Stations of the Cross. And in the RSV translation of the Bible, that opening verse reads, "Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows." In this reading from the prophet Isaiah, the prophet brings to us the depths of reality of what true servanthood is about. And as we reflect upon this text, we see that the prophet is